Hi, sexy listeners. Welcome to The Trouble with Sex. I'm Dr. Tammy. Today, so many of us have these experiences that we call stressful, we can call avoidant, we can call trauma. If you are paying attention in the world, you have had some pretty intense experiences in the past couple of years, whether it's from a sudden accident, from climate, from politics, from abuse, from illness, the loss of a loved one. We're all going through hardships. Any challenging experience that really feels overwhelming can be categorized as a trauma, but trauma touches us in a unique way. So there's a difference between integrating a difficult experience and having a trauma that feels in the moment like you can't cope. How do we get over those experiences or find our own resilient way of dealing with them? What truly matters is how we learn to cope and how we nurture ourselves and our relationships with the people around us so that we can build and keep our support systems and using strong connections to help us move through our healing process. So today, as we continue our discussion on healing from trauma, as I do my own healing work in my discussions with these incredible experts on trauma in this podcast, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Arielle Schwartz. She discusses the principles of resilience therapy and tells us what Polyvagal Theory is and how the practices of connecting your mind and body, understanding yoga, relaxation, all those things can actually help us rewire our nervous system. She talks about the benefits of all the parts of our nervous system, and we explore how these tools guide us towards wholeness and a deeper connection with ourselves and those we love. Dr. Arielle Schwartz is a speaker and author. She's written 8 books. She's an esteemed clinical psychologist in this area. She's really widely recognized for her research and the advancements in trauma treatment that she's developed. I've seen her speak at conferences, I've taken her courses, and I know her as a personal, amazing, sensitive, empathic woman who her own recovery has elevated her standard of care for all of us. Dr. Schwartz promotes a strength-based and embodied approach to trauma that we all need to recover. She has EMDR experience, somatic psychology, mindfulness, nature, relational psychotherapy, and through all that, she's developed her own resilience-informed therapy. So I really want to welcome her, and I wish we had more time to talk about her theories and to practice. So I would encourage you to explore more about Dr. Arielle Schwartz after you listen to our amazing discussion. We'll be right back. Are you at a crossroads in your relationship? Are you or your partner hesitant to commit the time and money to weekly couples therapy? You can resolve your conflict, work through affairs, increase intimacy, improve communication by working one-on-one with me, Dr. Tammy, in an intensive. It's similar to a couples workshop, but it's in person, private, just for the two of you, for a whole day or even 2 days. Come for an in-depth intervention that could last a lifetime. For more information, go to drtammynelson.com. That's DRTAMMY Nelson.com, and give yourself and your partner the relationship you both deserve. Wow, my sexy listeners, we have had a little bit of trauma just in the recording of this podcast episode today. And I feel so responsible for Arielle's comfort and happiness today. And it's so interesting how I take on all the guilt and shame about making people's experience enjoyable and comfortable and successful. And I really I'm feeling it now, and every ounce of my body and soul. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing and how you connect our nervous system and our responses to difficulties and in the somatic experience, but also I think I am having a nervous system response that's probably 50, 60 years old of oh no, someone's not happy, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not taking care of someone. I've probably had it my whole entire life.
Yeah. That was the first thing that I thought of when you were speaking about feeling so responsible to keep me happy and make sure it's a pleasurable experience for me. I mean, we can certainly, look back at all of those tendencies where we take over responsibility for other people's experience, and we can translate this right to everything that you talk about, right to the bedroom. But the experience of, is it okay that someone else is uncomfortable for a little bit? And can I be okay with their discomfort?
I'm just laughing. Can I be
laughing
okay?
And crying. So it was somewhere in the middle.
I know. Oh my God. And part of it is, a little bit of perfectionism. Part of it is, wanting to just do it right. And part of it is not wanting to disappoint people. And I wonder if, just being wound too tight, trying to do too many things in a small amount of time also puts us in a very narrow lane of what it means to be successful. And I love that you were sort of connecting it to the bedroom, this successful sexual experience. Sometimes we have a very narrow lane of what that means. If we hit this button and press this lever and get to this place, then it's successful. And if you're not happy, then I'm not okay.
Right. And you said something so important in there, which is really the time factor, right? There is a way in which ideally, in my world at least, if there's going to be the spacious, timeless, right, element that we can just add in, there's no rush, there's no goal, we're not trying to get somewhere, all of that just feels so freeing. But in the reality and the constraints of our world, there's timelines and calendars and alarms set and what time I have to wake up and make sure I fall asleep at the right time so I don't get too little sleep so I have the energy for tomorrow, and all of the things that can complicate feeling safe and feeling and the safety that's required for intimacy.
And just the letdown, just to come down all those levels of stress so that you can get it right, so you can sort of titrate in between. Okay, I got to come down to this level so I can relax and go to sleep, but I can't come down too far because then I won't want to have sex because I just want to go to sleep. There's an interesting little window of opportunity there. We call it the window of tolerance when we talk about trauma, but really we're talking about the window of opportunity when it comes to sex.
I think we've got a new term. I think it's going to go far. Yeah, because seriously, who doesn't relate to that I need to relax, but I can't relax too much. And what we're speaking about, in a sense, is about nervous system safety. And I think that's really the cornerstone of where we're going to land for trauma recovery, as well as just kind of finding that lane of where I can feel connected to myself.
Is that why you got into this work? Tell me how you landed here.
In the work of trauma recovery and somatics and nervous system, maybe the nervous system thread that connects all of this together. So, I started out arriving at this topic because of commitment to my own healing and journey of trauma recovery, and a whole variety of factors that contributed to my own complex trauma. And then I had some really enriching, amazing experiences that were somatically oriented, some of which were on the yoga mat, some of which were through body-mind centering, many of which were about connecting to my body in nature. And all of those kind of woke up this deep curiosity of the role of the body, both in carrying traumatic stress or keeping the score, but also the role of the body in healing and helping us reclaim our potential.
I got a little nudge when you said the body in nature. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking about where we grew up. I grew up on Long Island, New York, right? And walking distance from the beach. So I also had a lot of trauma growing up. I had two households, one of which felt like a very deeply safe household, and one of which was a household where I never really could feel settled in myself. I was on guard. There was vigilance. I felt very highly criticized and unsafe and so forth. But one of the threads that united both of these households was nature and that kind of solace and the sense of the ability to find that sense of freedom and safety outdoors, near the water, listening to shorebirds, watching the stars and the moon rise at night, like watching the sunset, anything that just kind of helped me put aside the strife, the adversities. Like one of those stories was that my childhood, my safe home, my mother's house, burned down when I was, didn't burn to the ground, but we had a fire. We had a fire in the house, and we had to move out of the house for 3 months as reparations were happening. But the cottage that we moved to literally sat across the street from the beach.
Oh, nice.
So it was this real juxtaposition of we're uprooted. I don't have all of the familiarities of home, but I had the familiarity of the fact that I could hear, the waves and again the shorebirds and like all of the felt sense of the air next to the water and so forth. So that became this through line that I've come back to again and again for 50 some years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the crossover of the body and the nervous system, how do we share with our listeners what's the work that they can do on themselves at home? They can't come to therapy. They don't have the privilege of paying or leaving their home or affording a polyvagal course. Like, what can they do that makes sense for them?
Yeah. I think I want to start out by just naming, like, what do we mean when we're talking about trauma and how it gets held in the nervous system, if you want to think about it that way.
Please.
So looking at how trauma is stored, when we experience an adversity, how do we feel that adversity? I mean, we're talking about, there's stress and there's trauma, and to some degree in our world, we're all being faced with cues of threats on pretty much a daily basis in the news and on our phones and scrolling social media and the world around us, right? So when we observe or experience something directly that feels traumatic or feels overwhelming, how does that show up? It shows up in how our body responds to it and how we respond emotionally, which is also an interoceptive body state, right? So we might hold our breath, or we might contract at the diaphragm, or we might shape our posture around this, or we might squeeze around our pelvic floor. I mean, these are just common things that we do. We clench our jaw. We develop tension in our shoulders. And then what begins to happen is that the felt sense in the body is now being registered by the brain as the threat, as the threat. So the threat is no longer out there, but it's what's happening in here in response to it. And then anytime I feel something that has a similar flavor to that felt sense in my body, let's say paying attention to my breath. How many times have I taught breath work to groups of people and they go, oh gosh, every time I pay attention to my breath, I have this felt sense memory of how a time when things were really scary and all I could hear was my own breath, right? So I don't like to breathe, or I don't like to pay attention to conscious breathing, right? Or the elevated heart rate. Every time I feel my heart rate speed up, I think something bad is going to happen. Maybe it's, again, the jaw tension, the belly tension, the clenching at the pelvic floor. So any of those can now become inside cues of threat. And so how do I deal with that? Well, how do we deal with threat in general? Maybe we avoid feeling it. I don't want to feel any of that. So I disconnect from feeling my body. I stay busy. I scroll on screens. I binge watch. I do anything to not have to feel what's in here. And, you know, and so part of like what we're talking about is now healing involves reclaiming a sense of safety in relationship to your felt sense, and that you know, that we get to kind of recalibrate that when I feel that elevated heart rate, or when I feel and pay attention to my breath, that now I'm doing that in a different context. So going back to nature, maybe this was a little bit of that nudge that you felt around that, but like I live in Colorado now. I spend a lot of time hiking in the mountains. And as we can imagine, when I'm hiking in the mountains, my heart rate elevates. I feel the boom, 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 right? My breath is like you're going to go into those experiences that in the threatening context, those same feelings might be associated to something bad's happening. In the right context, those same feelings are like, hallelujah, like I'm alive, I'm empowered, I'm feeling awesome, I'm feeling, you know, strong today. And then we can, of course, translate all of this into the bedroom. I'm still not answering your question, but just worth saying there, like, what are you going to feel in those moments? You're going to feel more of your body. And so we want to be able to reassociate the felt sense in the body without those automatic, habitual immediacies of something bad's happening. So then the question that you really asked is, what can we do on our own? What can we do to recalibrate and reassociate? And I think the beautiful thing is that probably, maybe it's always been there, but certainly since our pandemic, since 2020, there are now literally thousands of free resources out there that, you know, I've got a YouTube channel with 200 some videos on how do you, you know, going to work with your body and your nervous system. And I'm not the only one. Like there's podcasts and there's summits and there's, you know, a gazillion things that you can learn about your nervous system, and you can do practices that help you reclaim a new relationship to your body.
Yeah, I actually just printed out your complex post-traumatic stress disorder free worksheets. And when you're talking, I'm thinking, God, I have all those symptoms from my trauma, being attacked on the street and having someone like punch me in the head and push me down. I have a really hard time walking, where what I used to do every day, you know, for fun. Now I feel all those symptoms, you know, I can feel the clench, I can feel my jaw, I can feel everything in me. Walking just down a very common, safe street, I feel someone coming towards me and I'm like, oh my God, I need a weapon. And, you know, it's just a young guy who's just on his phone and having a nice day. And I'm like crossing the street and avoiding them. And it's such a horrible feeling. And it's been, what's today? It's been like 9 months. So when you say, you know, these are nervous system exercises, and you said, yeah, and we do things to avoid them. Like we go on our phone, we binge watch TV. I was like raising my hand, like, yeah, I do all those things.
Are you watching me secretly? Do you know my private life?
There's a camera in my house. Yeah, I mean, I really do, like anything to get out of that feeling, because there's not a like relaxed come down for me. It's like a go crash. And a crash is like at the end of the night, or I can just avoid feeling all those things. But it's really like go, avoid until the pickup truck of my body sort of slams into the wall at the end of the day. And then everything in the back of my pickup truck slams into the back of my head. And so, yes, yoga helps 100%. Yes, stretching helps. Yes, breathing helps. Yes, meditation helps. Also, eating Halloween candy, to be honest, does help a little bit. I feel like crap after, but there is something about that little rush. And being with, friends and loved ones. But I also find that being in trauma or being traumatized is actually just exhausting, like physically exhausting all the time. So when you're describing that clench feeling, it makes sense, right? That you're on hyper alert all the time, and that takes a lot out of you. And so, walking on the beach or walking up the mountain should be relaxing, but if you're constantly on high alert for danger, then you can come home and have a different kind of exhaustion. And so can you like sort of simplify it for us? Is that what you mean about nervous system? And what does the polyvagal thing really mean for people that may not be neuroscientists? Like can you just define it for our listeners?
Yeah, for sure. There's so much in your share yet again, and I love your kind of own story and your use of just kind of sharing with others who I'm sure can relate to what it feels like after a traumatic event, and those re-experiencing symptoms that you're describing of walking down now a safe street, but there's a vigilance. There is a tracking. Are you safe? Are you going to attack me like that person did? And the experience of the nervous system being in this kind of high alertness. So the sympathetic nervous system, if we, kind of just look at the autonomic nervous system as having these two primary branches. We've got our sympathetics and our parasympathetics. So the sympathetic is a mobilizing system, right? You're going to feel your heart rate elevate. You're going to feel your senses become more attuned to your environment. It's going to draw our sensory awareness out there. And then our parasympathetic, ideally, is the counterpoint that allows us to go into rest and digest. And that's the basics of our autonomic nervous system, but polyvagal theory illuminates a much more complex picture. And this is what really excited me about it, because for so long, and I've been studying the autonomic nervous system for 30 some years, right? And when I first was writing about this in the 1990s, much of the literature kind of demonized the sympathetic system, like that's the bad guy, and the good guy, the healing system is get into that relaxation response, get into your parasympathetic system. And it's a partially true story. But if we look in a much more nuanced, wet manner, and this is what polyvagal theory lets us do, is we can say, you know what? Our parasympathetic system has a rest mode, and it has a collapse or a fatigue, or you used the word crash before. Like sometimes we just go into crash mode, right? Where basically we're just like shutting down, we're isolating, we're withdrawing from the world, and we're coping to go into that slowing down, but we're not going into rest. We're falling off the edge.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. You're like, are you looking through that camera again?
Right.
You see in my life. And so, what polyvagal theory does is it illuminates that the parasympathetic nervous system is always a function of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is what brings us into a parasympathetic state, but that we have two different expressions. And so we can call this the vagal paradox or the parasympathetic paradox, but basically we have a branch or a circuit of the vagus nerve that helps us go into rest and calming, and that it's very much connected to a sense of feeling safe and connected. Right? Like I feel connected to you. We're co-regulating together. We're in sync. There's this quality of nourishment for my nervous system through connection that then lets me go into rest. But in the context of threat, and especially a threat that I can't escape, right? The nervous system goes into a much more primitive shutting down or immobilization, where it's still parasympathetic, but it's that falling off into urge to hide, urge to get small, powerless, helplessness, sometimes a feigned death or a faint response. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the nuances. I want to say just one more thing around the polyvagal theory, because there's also this recognition that when I feel safe and connected, our sympathetic nervous system also has multiple expressions. Right? In the context of threat, sympathetic is going to take me into fight or flight. in the context of social engagement and safety and enough environmental cues of safety, my sympathetic nervous system can take me into play, into joy, into playful connection, into enjoying climbing up that mountain, into dance, into empowerment, right? And so we can actually start to look at neither sympathetic or parasympathetic are good or bad or right or wrong. They're a system and we need both. And, kind of translating this into, some of your work around sexuality is also, they're both necessary around, the sexual exchange and experience. Like we all know, that playfulness is such an important part, and that is going to involve some sympathetic engagement as well as the ability to relax and to soften and to, soften but not drop off into the edge of sleep.
God, I feel like I'm going to cry just talking about this because when you were talking about, we'll cut this part. When we were talking about the sympathetic response, it's reminded me like, I do feel like I'm sort of cut off from that part of me that wants to dance and play and have a good time. And
that's it.
And I know that, my partner, my friends kind of miss that. They're like, where are you? What happened? What happened to like the party part of you? Yeah. And I'm like, dance? Like I was a big dancer. I was a big, turn on the music. I was responsible for the playlist. Now I'm like, let's just watch TV.
That's it. And Tammy, actually, I really hope you keep this in here because this is so deeply valuable. And thank you again for your vulnerability, because there is this way in which what we want to do is help you reclaim all of that, right? And to like really feel, and we do it slowly. And we talk a lot about titration, but like actually the reclamation of this is to go back towards it and to really help your nervous system recalibrate. Now there's no one out there to get me. Now there isn't a threat that's happening. And what happens as I feel myself making that playlist, dancing in my living room, like finding just the right edge, walking, but maybe walking with Bruce, right? Walking with a loved one who is like, I'm going to be the vigilant one, and I just want you to relax. I just want you to totally enjoy the walk. I'm going to take over vigilance for you for a little bit, right? Like anything that helps you reclaim what you love,
That's lovely. Well, that's lovely. Well, welcome to another therapy session for Dr. Tammy with Dr. Arielle Schwartz. Thank you.
I love you. I knew we'd have a good time. This is.
I'm glad you think this is a good time.
I'm suffering over here, but thank you for getting off on my suffering.
Such a therapist. You're like, yeah, let's go deep and make her cry. This is the fun stuff.
I had no agenda.
I know. No, you're great. You're wonderful. And when we get back from our break, we're going to ask you what we ask all of our guests. What do you think is the biggest trouble with sex today? We'll be right back.
So who needs vaginal dilators? Well, those in perimenopause and menopause who have low estrogen causing thin, pale, and shrinking tissue, painful intercourse or painful penetration, infrequent sexual penetration, vaginismus, vulvodynia, if your partner has a penis with a large girth or length, a neovagina patient, breast and other female cancer patients, if you've had pelvic floor radiation, and virgins. Now, the primary benefit of my wearable vaginal dilators include mobility during use. They're more comfortable, there's more compliance, better outcome with faster results than traditional dilators where you have to lay down, plus your ability to multitask. You can find my Shiology wearable dilators on my website at drsherry.com. But wait, there's more. I want to introduce you to my wearable anal dilators. 36% of women 44% of heterosexual men and 80% of gay men enjoy anal play on a regular basis. I have created the only wearable anal dilators that come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors to help you gently and safely stretch the anal opening, making anal play more pleasurable and comfortable. My wearable anal dilators help avoid injury and trauma to the anal opening. Whether you enjoy anal penetration with a penis, finger, or sex toy, carefully stretching the anal sphincter will make anal play much more enjoyable with added satisfaction and less anal trauma. I designed them with you and your active lifestyle in mind. You can find them on my website at drsherry.com.
The Psychotherapy Network or Symposium is the preeminent conference in Washington, D.C. for therapists. They recently started Innovations in Psychotherapy in Anaheim, California. We've attended both and asked attendees what they thought was the biggest trouble with sex today. Here's what one therapist had to say.
What do you think is the biggest trouble with sex today?
It's not talked about enough. It's not talked about the challenges in the bedroom, how certain medications affect people's libido or erectile dysfunction, and then it creates a lot of difficulties in the relationship, or even people who have trauma knowing what safe touch feels like.
We'd like to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest trouble with sex today? Go to thetroublewithsex.com and click on Ask Dr. Tammy and submit your response today. We may use it on a future episode. Now, let's get back to our conversation with our guest to hear their answer. And we're back with Dr. Arielle Schwartz. Thank you so much for this therapy session today. And it's been really, really helpful. And I want to ask you, what do you think is the biggest trouble with sex today?
Yeah. I think that we have in some ways have been leaning into this as we've been speaking, but I think that part of it is that, especially in the context of trauma, which is really, the lane that I sit in, that there's so often these implicit, and by implicit I mean like kind of felt sense experiences that are related to the past that then kind of make their way into the bedroom, right? And that there are these very quick, automatic, associative experiences that are happening kind of like at the level of the brainstem. It's not even about like I'm consciously aware that I'm perceiving those felt sense experiences as a threat, but that my body and my nervous system is receiving those sensations and scanning for what next bad thing might happen if I feel that. Mm-hmm. And so to some degree, our work becomes like, how do we really slow things down enough to cultivate enough play and safety and social connection so that maybe I can notice when I'm freezing or gripping or checking out, disconnecting, planning my to-do list while I'm trying to be intimate with my partner, right? Like the things that we do to cope. But I don't think that ultimately that's a successful strategy. What we want to do is feel safe enough to say, hey, wow, I noticed that I just went somewhere else, or I gripped, or I'm not feeling right now, or I'm feeling afraid right now. And if I'm safe enough to be physically intimate with you, can I be safe enough to be that emotionally transparent with you?
That's so important. So if I can be physically intimate with you, can I be emotionally transparent? Which is really, the definition of intimacy, like intimacy. Yeah. Can I really share with you what's happening inside of me?
Yeah.
No, I love that. And and I think there is, I've said this before on the podcast, and I say this when I'm speaking, but I think we talk the least about sex to the person we're actually having sex with. And it's really hard to talk about sex with your partner, especially during sex. So I really like what you're saying. I think people get stuck in the pattern of around pleasure. Pleasure is a activating thing for all of us. And then when it's, tweaked with some old trauma stuff or recent trauma stuff, it's very confusing and it's hard to talk about. It's hard to give words to it. It's a different part of your brain.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think, again, like going back to depth of emotional intimacy, that there's a way in which we want to like know that we can have those intimate conversations with our partners in, that don't wait until all of a sudden, like, here we are in the bedroom together. And now I feel like, oh, I'm going to ruin the moment if I bring this up. Like, oh, we definitely can't talk about that. Right. And so like, if I'm feeling that sometimes what we might notice is that like, I'm going to jump into physical intimacy because it's actually a way to avoid having to be with the emotional intimacy. And if I'm noticing that pattern, where does that come from? And how has sex been a way for me to actually not feel? And so, as you said, like, can we actually have these edgy, uncomfortable, vulnerable conversations with someone, maybe while we're sitting on the couch, right? It could lead to a much more intimate bedroom conversation or experience, but let's actually start before we get there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I have a question from a listener. Lizzie from Seattle wants to know, I'm recently divorced and just started dating. Sex in my marriage felt safe and was communicative, but I recently had an experience having sex for the first time with a new partner that brought me back to a time in college when I was very drunk and raped by someone I knew. Oh, I'm sorry, Lizzie. From the flashes I remember of that night, I was completely silent. I couldn't speak at all. I have had lots of therapy, and I thought I was at peace with this trauma. But when I had sex with this new man, I went silent and I could not be me. I did not feel unsafe, and I don't know what brought me back to that place. What can I do to feel in my body and enjoy these new sexual experiences as I begin my new single life? Lizzie from Seattle, thank you so much. I had your experience of that date rape in college is so statistically common, and not to demean your experience at all. I'm just letting you know you are not alone, girl, and you are so brave to share that with us, and you've come to the right place. So I just want to let you know that everything that Dr. Schwartz is saying makes sense in this context, that being in your body, feeling pleasure would make it really difficult to communicate what you're feeling in that moment if stuff is coming up for you. I totally get it. Arielle, is there maybe advice or thoughts that you have aside from get up and call your therapist in the middle of having sex? Because I don't know if we could do that.
Right. I think that the recognition that you froze and that you didn't have your voice in that moment, that in itself is so powerful, right? Mm-hmm. Like that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And so like, whenever it is that you're looking back at those moments, can you hold that part of you that froze and didn't speak up and didn't say, hey, I disconnected, with the most compassion, mm-hmm. the most love, right? Like even that, what we'll call symptom or reactivation of the trauma, is your body and your nervous system doing the best possible job to try and protect you. So there, like that right there of just kind of going like, okay, it felt uncomfortable. It felt embarrassing. I felt disconnected. I went back into that place, but I know you were trying to protect me. And it's very often that we can do this work. We can go and do trauma therapy. We can get layers of the trauma and we think, okay, like that's over, that's done. And then boom, we go back into a situation and we're like, whoa, that wasn't done. There was actually more for me there. And we discover what I'll call kind of like next layer. If we, want to use the onion metaphor, it's like, oh, wow, I really got to another layer here. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as that was, mm-hmm. that let you know that maybe you cognitively processed some of it. Maybe you processed a layer of emotion and sensate experience. But there's another layer that now your body is revealing like, oh, wow, I might go back and do another round now that I have access to it. And trauma works that way. Trauma recovery works that way. It's very rare that we get like a one and done therapy session or even a 5 therapy session. Like, okay, I'm done with that. Like usually it's layered. And again, that requires so much self-compassion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think that's actually a lovely response. And the fact that we're, both saying to you, Lizzie, it makes so much sense that this is happening to you and that you're recognizing it is a huge step. And I hope that you reach out for more advice from Dr. Arielle's resources, and for any additional help you need, we're going to put some links in the show notes. So, Arielle, where can people find you and find more of you, and how can they get more help in all of these areas around trauma?
Yeah. Well, you can find me if you look up Dr. Arielle Schwartz. If you go to YouTube, it's under Dr. Arielle Schwartz. Facebook, Dr. Arielle Schwartz. Website is Dr. Arielle Schwartz. So that makes things easy for you. Instagram's different. It's Arielle Schwartz Boulder. And but beyond that, you can also find me at resilience-informed-therapy.com. That's a kind of public-facing page that has resources for the general public as well as for therapists on how to treat trauma. I've got 8 books out there, and I have, one thing I'll give a shout out to is I have a course that's less than the cost of a single therapy session. It's called Let Your Body Hold You. It's through New Harbinger Courses, and it's basically built to accompany the Polyvagal Theory workbook for trauma on walking you through the practices that I use, that I offer to clients, that basically step by step kind of brings you through a trauma recovery process. And I hope that you'll seek that out if that's of benefit to you.
Well, I'm going to seek it out. I think I'm going to sign up today so that I can, have you with me all the time and walk through that, and just have your voice remind me all the time, every day, what I need to do to heal. And I just want to hang out with you more. I'm just so thrilled that you came on today. Thank you so much.
We will do that. And by the way, when we're back in DC in March, I'm going to hold your hand when we walk down that street. Okay. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being here for our listeners.
Yeah.
And this has been another episode of The Trouble with Sex. To all my sexy listeners, stay sexy, stay safe, stay sane. I'm Dr. Tammy. Have a question about your relationship or sexual wellness? Visit thetroublewithsex.com and click on Ask Dr. Tammy to send us your questions. For sex-positive tips, live events, and updates, join our mailing list and follow us on Instagram at The Trouble with Sex. Listen to episodes of The Trouble with Sex on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please share and rate the show. We so appreciate and thank you for supporting us. The Trouble with Sex is produced by Brandy Savitt. Audio for this episode was designed by Bethany Knoll Productions. This episode was engineered and mixed by Bruce Hirschfield. Music by Bruce Hirschfield.